Yes, we did have a fire. It went out in the middle of the night.
Okay.
Now there's a log in there, but I mean, there's a lot of ash in there because I put some paper in trying to.
Can you see in there good?
No.
Okay, you always want to keep it this way. See it?
Right.
Watch your viewfinder. That's what it'll look like on the computer. Okay, so
Get
we
a
want
flashlight.
to pull all this crap out.
Right. And this piece is, what do you call this piece? This
That's
round
the
piece?
ash dump cover.
Ash dump cover.
Right. So we get a look in there. Can you see?
Hold on. Let me get a flashlight. Let's see. Did you base this design on anything, or just think it up? You just thought it?
Just thought it up. Okay, so we got a lot of ash and paper in there. I don't like to use a lot of paper because it doesn't burn properly. We'll show that in a minute. But you want to get all this ash out of here.
It's good to have a little ash pot, right?
Yeah. And I just sweep it down into those holes like that. If it's cold, you can actually use a vacuum cleaner and just sweep this thing out. But I never let my stove get cold, so I'm usually wearing a glove and doing this. And that's how much fire ash there is.
The holes usually be uncovered? Is that what?
Yeah, and you want to make sure there aren't any crunchy things that are going to keep that from sitting flat.
Right.
Okay? Keep that, it's got a ring on it, from sitting flat. It should always sit nice and flat. So we're going to bring it inside here now. I'm going to set that in there. And we're going to make sure, I'll spin this thing back and forth a little bit and make sure it's sitting flat. Because if it's not, air's going to come up around that thing and it's going to screw up how the entire stove runs.
Okay, so that has to be flat, and you can rotate it to make sure.
Next thing we're going to do, can you grab me one of those fire starters?
Yes. Fire starter much better than
Fire
paper.
starter!
What would you do if you didn't have fire starters? What would you use then?
Fat wood or paper, a little bit of paper, I guess, but I try not to.
Flat
so I'm
wood
just gonna. Fat wood, you know what fat wood is?
Like a flat, no.
No, fat wood is generally, it's a type of pine. Tell you what, let's move this up here. That type of pine that's full of oils.
Right.
And it's very flammable. Makes a great fire starter.
Probably a lot of that around here.
Probably. Okay, so we just take this little flaming ball and kind of
Did you like to start fires when you were a child?
Oh God, yeah. Always.
Always. That's
All
what
right,
got
so
you
we're gonna
making
take
this.
that.
Right.
And set it in there. Okay, so I got the air all the way open, and now I'm just gonna close the door. We're gonna watch it take off.
People should know if you don't bolt this down, they will slide a little. The stove will slide if it's not bolted.
Bolted down.
Yeah, that's taken off pretty
aggressively. So sometimes when you go to start a wood stove, you'll open the door and you'll feel cold air blowing at you.
Right.
Okay, because the chimney's cold, it's downdrafting. So what we do is throw this in there. Sometimes I'll have to leave the door cracked open just a little bit like that, but yours drafts really well, so I don't have to do that.
Right. Now
just let this thing get going, and then over here, we've got these little sawdust log chunks, and we want to have a few of them. So I'm going to take your hammer, and I'm going to just pop that log right there. We got another chunk.
Almost like cutting salami.
We got another chunk. Cutting salami. You got it. Another chunk. Okay.
Roger, the underneath of this is there, you said there's a hole in the stove for the air.
There's a hole in the bottom of the stove.
Right.
And then we cut holes in these tiles underneath there.
Right.
And we put a hole through the floor of the coach.
Right.
And down there you've got a metal, there's some sort of metal thing in there. And there's plenty of air that flows up. Oh, it's one of your I-beams. Right. There's plenty of air that flows up around that I-beam.
Right.
So when we got down through the floor, there was about this much clearance. So there's plenty of air from underneath the trailer to come up and feed our fire.
Right, because a lot of people have been asking me, you know, a lot of people say you can't put a wood stove in an RV or a small place because it'll use up the oxygen and suffocate you.
Right, it's possible, you know. I've never seen it actually happen. And in 28 years of working on houses, I found 5 houses that needed an outside air kit.
The battery.
You don't believe this needs an outside hose, right?
I don't believe it needs it, but we did it anyway. You know, we don't.
You just do the outside hose to the floor, so it's better to the eye than seeing hoses.
Exactly, yeah, because we would have had a big hose coming out through the wall.
And Mike, you actually did that? You cut through the floor?
Yeah.
He did it, or?
We did it together. We did it all. Look at it. This guy here, that's Mobile Mike. This man, Montana, you're lucky. This guy knows what he's doing. We may have to kidnap and take him to Seattle.
Now, would you recommend putting like a pot of water on top of the stove for?
Yep. Yeah, in dry climates, yes, and this is a dry climate, so that's a good idea. Oh, what are you using? What do you got there?
Self-tappers.
Okay. In this climate, it's a really good idea. Back in Seattle, we're trying to dry the air out. Here, your air is already dry, so you can put a 2-quart steamer on this thing, and it'll boil it off.
Nice.
Isn't that sweet? So Mike's just ramming some screws.
One there and one.
Right in through that collar now. Remember, we cut that collar and we put a screw in there, so the T is on there, and then he's going to run another one.
About even with this, or below,
right
in between that and that?
Right, this is a good area to do.
Right here?
Yep. See, these self-tapping screws are great. Whoa! Here I'm bragging. Self-tapping screws are great. They're actually self-drilling. Poor Mike. He knows he's on film. He's having a moment. There you go. Awesome. Awesome. Now we're starting to get a good bit of fire in the bottom of this puppy now.
One more here.
Up here. And I'm going to wrap for a while.